All Blacks against England this weekend, folks. Scott Robertson's first ever All Blacks team has been named. England's one has been named a couple of days ago. We'll go through the squads, some of the kind of ins and outs, some of the stats, predictions, and you guys can let us know your thoughts. But certainly a lot of feedback and talk around Scott Robertson's first ever squad. Now we're down to his first team, and I'd say pretty predictable. Not really any real shockers, barring the fact that Stephen Perofeta starts at fullback. I think most people, if you'd put money on it, would have called Bodie at fullback. But Stephen Perofeta, who missed a large chunk of the Super Rugby season injured, gets the nod at 15. Certainly with the amount England kick, he will need to be on form at the back fielding those high balls. But the rest of the squad, I feel like there's no real shockers there. The front row to Groot, Tele'a and Lomax. That's the same front row that ran out in the Rugby World Cup final, so they'll be looking to dominate up front. Scott Barrett and Patrick Tuipulotu. Barrett is captain, so you can expect him to probably go the course of the game. And Paddy also was coming back from an injury, but managed to run out for the Super Rugby final, so obviously he is match fit. He's one guy that didn't feature in the Rugby World Cup final, but he's certainly an experienced All Black, and he's been in great form in Super Rugby. And with the retirements of Sam Whitelock and with Brodie Retallick overseas, the locking stocks had been looking a little bit thin, but his return from injury is certainly a good bolstering one for the All Blacks. Finau, Papali'i, and Ardie Savea. That is certainly a changed back row. Ardie Savea, World Player of the Year, continues on at number 8. There was a little bit of talk about him playing 7, but Scott Robertson likes a number 7 who makes heaps of tackles. So I think Dalton was always going to get the nod there, and the fact that Savea has literally just won World Player of the Year at number 8, I feel like kind of cemented him as a number 8. And Finau kind of steps in for Frizzell, who is also now overseas. Finau, that big kind of bulky lock loose forward, number 6, is certainly going to add a bit of punch, and he's certainly another liner option. And as I mentioned, Papali'i, he's one of the top tacklers in Super Rugby, so I feel like for the way Razor likes to play, he is probably the best of the bunch for 7s that are in that kind of Razor mold. Backs-wise, Perenara's return to the All Blacks has been a bit of a comeback story, because he missed a lot of rugby injured, and there was kind of doubts whether he would ever get back. But the fact that Cam Roigard got injured in Super Rugby certainly meant that he was able to put his hand back up at Super Rugby level and has done enough to earn himself a start at number 9. And Damian McKenzie is going to pull the strings at number 10. Remember, with Mo'unga being overseas now, he isn't eligible for selection. So Damian McKenzie was the top point scorer in Super Rugby. He's been busting tackles. I mean, the Chiefs didn't have the greatest day at the office in the Super Rugby final, but over the course of the year, he's been one of the more impressive guys at 10. And he gets the nod. Jordie, Barrett, Rieko, Ioane in the midfield. That's the same as what we saw in the World Cup final. Tele'a on the left wing was also there in the World Cup final. He's had a lot of carries in Super Rugby, been really impressive. And then Sevu, Reece, speaking of impressive, missed last year's World Cup campaign with injury, but playing for a Crusader side who were pretty awful this year, still finished joint equal top try scorer in Super Rugby. So he's also kind of in the form of his life, likes to set up other guys with his offloads and whatnot too. And then, as I mentioned, Perofeta at fullback was the biggest surprise. Front row replacements, Aumua, Tuipulotu, and Newell. Kind of all experienced All Blacks, but none of them played in the World Cup final. Vaa'i is also there as your lock replacement. Luke Jacobson can cover all the back row. Finlay Christie, Anton Lienert-Brown, and then Beauden Barrett are the 3 guys. The back replacements all played in that World Cup final as well. So yeah, like I mentioned, no real kind of left field ones. I feel like most people would have had Perofeta and Barrett around the other way, but we'll see how Stephen goes. For England, they named their side a couple of days ago, like I mentioned, and it's a pretty steady as she goes England lineup. They've not made wholesale changes from the side that played Japan a fortnight ago. They have changed the props. Marla gets a start and Will Stewart gets a start at loosehead and tight head respectively. They were both on the bench for that Japan game, and Jamie George is going to captain the side at hooker. Maru Itoje and George Martin in the locks. So that's I think steady as she goes. There's no change there. They've been a pretty good duo. I feel like Maru does a lot of the line-out work. He also tries to poach at the breakdown. And then George Martin makes crunching tackles and makes crunching cleanouts. I mean, Maro's a top defensive tackler as well, but that's a really hard-hitting second row anyway. Cunningham-South, Underhill, and Ben Earl are the back row. Cunningham-South's had a bit of a rise in recent times as well, certainly a New Zealand connection for him, so it'll be interesting to see how him kind of facing down the haka. Sam Underhill, speaking of big defensive dominant tacklers, that's what he does. And then Ben Earl, I mean, goodness me, he has been one of the world's best players in the last 12, 18 months. Like, looking at his stats, man. For England anyway, he's their top tackler, their top defender beater, like tackle breaker. He's their top guy for run meters. Like, he is just phenomenal. He's doing everything. So him up against Savea, two of the best eights in the world right now. Backs wise, Alex Mitchell, Marcus Smith. It's an attacking minded 19 combo. Smith maybe doesn't kick as much as Mitchell does. They kick a bit more off 9, but he also likes to snipe. Does Alex Mitchell? So the All Blacks will need to watch him because he likes to bust a tackle, and Marcus Smith, very attacking-minded, number 10. Ollie Lawrence and Henry Slade, that's pretty steady as she goes in the midfield. Slade's got a big left boot on him as well. And then wings, Feyi-Waboso and Freeman, plus Furbank at 15. So Feyi-Waboso, a big tackle buster on the right wing. Freeman's been getting himself into some real space. He's lightning quick. And then Furbank is more of that playmaking 15. They've also got Freddie Stewart, who they pick sometimes at fullback, who's more of that kind of big, tall bit of timber, traditional, gets the ball in the air, fullback, likes to run it, but Furbank much more likely to bring other guys into the game rather than necessarily always go himself. But yeah, him and Perofeta are kind of, I guess, a bit similar in that regard. So yeah, really, really interesting side, and the stability is only going to build the cohesion against an All Black side, which is, again, it's largely made up of guys who played in that World Cup final, but still it's a new coaching setup, so they may not be quite as up to speed as the English guys are. Bench-wise, Theo Dan, Finn Baxter, and Dan Cole. So a kind of mix of youth and experience in the front row. Alex Coles is the lock replacement. Remember, Charlie Ewell's got red carded against Japan, so he's ineligible for the tour. Tom Curry's on the bench. Remember, he's not had a lot of rugby with a long-term injury himself. Ben Spencer is in at number 9, so that is a change. He's in for Randall, but he's certainly not that many England caps, but certainly experienced campaigner and been in good form in the Premiership. Finn Smith is the replacement, kind of 10, and Ollie Slightholme there on the bench as well. So, yeah, it's a few more changes on the bench in the starting lineup for England, but certainly some really, really dangerous players. Stats-wise, like if you're looking at the All Blacks, it's a bit hard because this is literally Razor's first game in charge. But as I mentioned, he likes a 7 who makes a lot of tackles. Like, he's had Christie at the Crusaders in recent years, and he's had Matt Todd before that. So that's kind of Dalton's role at number 7. He also has sides which tend to have really good fundamentals. Their lineup numbers are always good. The scrum numbers are always good. Their ruck completion numbers are always good, which has been an area of maybe not so much in when Jason Ryan got as the assistant coach under Fozzie, but for a time, the physicality at the breakdown has been an area where the All Blacks have certainly been questioned, but it has been an area of strength in more recent times. But that's certainly going to be an area of focus for Razor, really high work rate sides. And his sides tend to have really high scoring outside backs. I mean, that kind of goes without saying because a lot of sides like to feed it wide. But Sevu, Reece, George Bridge, Will Jordan, all these guys have tended to be Razor's top try scorers for the Crusaders. So look to see Sevu Reece getting a fair bit of ball, I would imagine. For England, like I mentioned, they kick it a fair bit. 30 kicks a game from hand is more than most sides. So the All Blacks will need to be fielding those kicks well, or England will put them under a lot of pressure. The goal kicking for England this season's been around about 70%, which is not that flash, and some kickers do find the Dunedin conditions a little bit tricky. Remember, it's a covered stadium, but it still does have a wind that comes through it. So it's, some kickers don't like the conditions down there. I seem to remember Wilkinson struggling with them at one point when he came down here over a decade ago. A good chunk of England's tries also come from set piece, like a couple of maul tries, scrum tries, like line out tries. England's set piece is gonna be, if it's not an area of strength, then the All Blacks will be certainly shutting down one of England's potential strike weapons. So look for the kind of set piece battle to be decisive. And the start of the second half, interestingly, when you're looking at where England score a lot of their points, has been this year anyway their most productive. So whatever England are doing at halftime in their analysis, seems to be working. History between the sides across the last 5. We're looking at 2022 being the most recent one. That was that 25-all draw. Prior to that, Rugby World Cup 2019, which was a pretty famous dominant victory for England. That is one of the most dominant performances I've ever seen from England over the All Blacks. But the previous 3 to that, and we are going back a decade to 2014, 3 wins for the All Blacks. The average score 22-19. So they tend not to be blowouts. Like the biggest blowout is the oldest of the 5 games, which is 36-13. That was a decade ago. Not quite to the day because it was June. But yeah, 36-13 in Hamilton. So a really, really long time ago. But that was a game played in New Zealand. All the other 4 games were either played at Twickenham or the one in Japan. So yeah, it's been a while since we've seen England on New Zealand soil. Predictions-wise, the bookies are saying New Zealand by 12. It was 14 a couple of days ago, so the bookies number seeming to be shifting. That's a New Zealand bookmaker. I've seen a European bookmaker's got it at 11. So New Zealand predicted to win by just over a try. The Rugby Forecast algorithm's got it by substantially more, saying 21. Home advantage for New Zealand being apparently pretty decisive. Kickoff time is 7:05 local time, so it's an evening kickoff. It'll be pretty brisk down in Dunedin, but like I said, no risk of rain because it's a covered stadium. Early morning for you guys over in the UK. Get up, have a cup of coffee, and watch the rugby with some breakfast, I would imagine. Nika Umashukeli, the Georgian, is the ref. If you want to watch and you're in the States, Flow Rugby's got this game, the Box in Ireland, the Aussies and the Welsh, the Italians up against the Samoans. There's a bunch of rugby on Flow if you're in the States, so check that out down in the description. And if you want England rugby gear for you England fans, check out England Rugby Store. Also down in the description. They are always having sales on and whatnot, especially when big tests are on the horizon. But yeah, you guys let us know your thoughts. How do you see this one going? Do you see England challenging the All Blacks, especially up front at set piece time where they have had a fair bit of pay in 2024? Do you see Razor's boys hitting the ground running? Or do you think there's a little bit of kind of lack of cohesion for a side which is getting their first run out under the new coaching setup? You guys let us know your thoughts, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. See ya.